Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hello, Emanuele. Good day.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Good day to you. It's hot
I've heard.
and sunny, so, it's
Surprisingly sunny
how
for the
not to
Netherlands.
be optimistic. Well, it is summer, but anyways, whenever the sun is shining, how not to be optimistic and how not to look at the bright side of things. So
Can't
lots
agree
of
more.
lots of that.
Sorry if I'm a little bit delayed if my connection is not great, but we can give it just one more minute for a couple of more people to get in here. I know there has been some interesting relevant news recently. Well, first of all, MiCA came into full effect starting today. We also posted a very interesting article. So if you guys didn't read it yet, I do recommend it. Jade wrote a very nice article about MiCA and also how we are prepared for regulation in EU and MiCA as well. Emanuele, do you want to give your thoughts on MiCA going into full effect in this time?
Yeah, I think that the main thought would be go read the article because it's actually well done. I think that MiCA or the coming into full effect of MiCA is definitely a very good milestone, but we shouldn't forget that regulation, especially regulations that pertain to a completely new asset class like crypto, for instance, is very fluid. So it's not really, I mean, the fact that it's coming into effect is definitely a very good thing because it provides a little bit of stability to the overall space, to the overall ecosystem. And it is something to welcome, especially after years of, regulatory unclarity, which still is, the norm for a lot of different other legislation outside of the EU. Even in the EU, there are different kind of takes on the MiCA regulations because MiCA, as all the different kind of directives, pertains to the entirety of the European Unions, and therefore it needs to be translated into different kind of specific laws depending on the nations, depending on the member state that enforces them. And it was like that for MiFID, however you pronounce it. It is definitely the case, probably even more so for MiCA. So again, today it's a very good day because it comes into full force, and so again, the room for regulatory unclarity shrinks. But this doesn't necessarily mean that MiCA is, a law that is set in stone. It is a general directive. And with all the directive, especially in the European Union, it needs basically to be implemented. And it is implemented differently depending on where somebody operates. And in the Netherlands, we have a little bit more of a, I would say, stricter, although at the same time forward-looking, if we can reconcile these two different adjectives, look at the overall MiCA law, and regulators are actually quite are quite, I wouldn't say excited because it's not really providing the very good, a very loyal image of the regulators, but definitely they are interested in understanding how to translate the general directive into law, and what in fact are the different kind of interpretations that they are going to be presented, because whenever you have a multitude or a multiplicity of different organizations that apply to a certain license or that want to comply with certain regulations, then you have as many exceptions as there are the organizations that actually do apply. So again, a very exciting time. We are going to look at how the entirety of the system evolves. But there is again, it's quite the regulatory uncertainty. The surface for regulatory uncertainty is shrinking. So we have quite a solid interpretation of the directive at this particular point in time. Let's remind everybody what MiCA is and is not about, because I think it's actually very interesting. Probably I'm going to repeat myself a little bit, but bear with me. I'm an old guy. Sometimes I forget what I talk about. So one thing is that the main point about MiCA regulations pertain to those organizations that in fact translate or act as a gateway between the decentralized world and the centralized one. These organizations, they are called CASPs. That stands for Crypto Asset Service Providers. Now, these crypto services are a number, and they are very heterogeneous in nature. There are many different kind of service that are provided by the service providers, from on-ramping fiat into crypto or vice versa, to providing a marketplace for these for crypto assets, to providing stable coins, to providing essentially representation of different kind of digital cash, to a lot of different other services. And what MiCA sets out to do is to primarily tackle what is the main point and the main worry of the regulators, especially those that work very closely with the central bank, which is essentially monetary supply. So stable coins have been seen as, I wouldn't say a threat, but certainly they have been looked at with preoccupation by the regulators, because essentially they are a different mean of money, one that escapes the control and checks of the central banks. Because by providing stable coin, essentially by treating certain stable coins as equivalent of fiat, essentially what might happen is that you're going to see an inflationary pressure on a certain particular legislation that is completely outside of the control of the central bank. So because of that, then a big portion of the MiCA regulation and directive is designed to regulate stable coins, to make sure that whenever there is a crypto asset service provider that provides some centralized services, mainly the capability of accepting stable coin and releasing fiat, so that there isn't really anything that is created and anything that gets destroyed. So this is one of the main points. The other point is about the fact that all these different kind of crypto asset service providers, they cannot be an alternative route that gets used in order to circumvent certain legislations, like the AML legislation or any other legislation that essentially is created with the intention of providing certain level of monitoring of financial crimes or financial activities. So these are the two main things. What MiCA does not do is dictate what happens in the decentralized world, right? It basically just keeps an eye on the gateway between Web 2, the normal financial ecosystem, and Web 3. So the decentralized one that operates on new assets like crypto, or crypto representation of assets that actually do exist in the economic infrastructure. For instance, fiat money, for instance, commodities, for instance, securities, and so on and so forth. For what concerns securities, then normally the law that is applied is not MiCA, is MiFID, which is a superset of MiCA. MiCA can see as complementing MiFID by getting some of its regulations, some of its directive, and focusing on the crypto part. But for what concern all the other assets, essentially, MiCA establishes a framework of working with this new asset class. So this is roughly what MiCA is all about. Of course, there are many different details that would be probably a little too long to mention here. But certainly today is quite a good day and an interesting day for crypto as a whole, because it means essentially that the expected adoption that we have been working toward for quite some time is, as all the different kind of groundwork at the moment established, to be able to happen and to take the financial world as a storm.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great day in crypto. And if you guys want to get a little bit deeper into understanding MiCA, I do recommend you go and check out the article. It goes even deeper into what Emanuele just mentioned. But the second news I wanted to talk about today was, which I've been seeing also a couple of questions.
That's what we want to talk about, right? My shirt.
Oh, you read my mind.
Has said something about OpenZeppelin, which is the T-shirt that I'm wearing right now, is a swag. But I will also say that in the past I have been having several different meetings with the teams at OpenZeppelin, and I've been always quite impressed with their professionalism and with their capability of helping everybody in the development world, in the Web3 development world, by providing an absolute set of different tools that has been established as probably standard. So I'm very proud of wearing their shirt today. And for those of you that might speculate whether we are talking with OpenZeppelin for kind of integrating their tools, yes, we are, and we have been for quite some time. We are very interested in actually just not reinventing the wheel, just getting anything that has been established as standard tools for development. OpenZeppelin is definitely among the top 3. And they are very interested also in the tokenization part. And because of that, and because of our privacy friendliness or our competence with zero knowledge tools, then we started to talk. Since I believe already, I think ETHCC from last year, it was in Brussels, if I'm not mistaken. And we never stopped, talking. And as a matter of fact, they were the first actually just to start the suggestion and the advice of looking into launching an EVM compatible execution layer. Now, it's not that we did it. It's not that we did it because they suggested it, but it was already in my mind, in the mind of the technical team, and their advice, just had a certain weight there. So I'm a big fan of OpenZeppelin, and I hope that we will be able to do something together very soon. We will do something together very soon, because with an EVM compatible execution layer, then people can use the tooling of OpenZeppelin. But perhaps there is something to be said about reaching out their clients, especially those that are looking at tokenizations for different kind of purpose. That was the question, right?
That was exactly what I want to talk about. It's amazing that we can finally, you finally shared it with the community here. That's awesome to hear. great relationship with the OpenZeppelin team since EFCC guys. And we're working on with their dev tools, which is awesome. Another thing which had just crossed my mind now, I don't know. I heard something about Robinhood launching their L2 for stock exchange, stock trading in the EU. I'm not sure if you've heard this news, but there were a couple of questions asking about your opinion on that, and if you think it has any impact on Dusk and what we're building.
I think the impact on Dusk is that there isn't really much impact on Dusk. I think it is quite important to reiterate a concept here. One thing is basically, to provide, to have an application that does this or that. Another entirely is to have an entire protocol that has a proximity to certain particular licenses that are so important and so defining of all the different kind of operations that you want to do within a certain economic and financial context, that these licenses are naturally extended to all the different kind of applications that are inside of a protocol. Now, for protocols that are much bigger than Dusk, for instance, in terms of market cap, in terms of adoption, in terms of everything, these, although it's always great to have a very high market cap, I mean, don't get me wrong, I would definitely wish for us to at some point basically to get back and to even surpass certain height that we have seen. It is also true that these particular protocols, they are at some point when they start to operate very, very close to regulations, they become a systemic risk. They are looked at as systemic risks by the regulators, right? So because of that, then it is unfeasible to think that at some point a protocol like Ethereum, a protocol like Optimism, protocol that is so big already, to basically think that that protocol will have a certain license extended to the overall, to the overall protocol participants, because this would turn these protocols that are essentially not, that are unregulated and are left unregulated, this would turn them into an enormous surface for attacks, for vulnerabilities, but most importantly for systemic risks that regulators would definitely not give the possibility to this protocol by default to be able to grant a certain license to somebody else. What does this mean? It means that essentially on these protocols, through Robinhood, through Aave, through any kind of platforms out there, we will have the usual application. The applications is going to be a vertical application that has got its own assets, and these assets, when they are securities, will stay there, which is the reason why all these different kind of exchanges in the past, they started their own app chain. Remember DYDX, for instance? Exactly. They created their own app chain. They were on Ethereum. Then at some point, they basically created their own app chain. Hyperliquid, same thing. All these different kind of platform at some point, for reasons that are close to either controlling the users, controlling the KYC, and most importantly to deal with regulators in a better way, or in a more compliant fashion, to not really have problems, then they normally branch out. In our case, it's a different thing. We are not starting from the application, we are starting from a protocol. And we are creating the application, so the MPEX application on top of the protocol, not really in order to basically isolate and segregate the assets from all the other protocol participants. We are creating an application in order to make onboarding, the necessary onboarding, through KYC means and this kind of stuff, on MPEGs so easy that then when a user actually is onboarded, then it has access to all the different kind of applications that are deployed on Dusk and can, in fact, make use of security assets. What we are trying to create, what we are doing is basically the other way around. Now, when Robinhood, for instance, it gets whatever kind of license or launches on your, it's an application. It will be successful as you want, but as a matter of fact, it is unfeasible to imagine that the assets on Robinhood can be composed on assets on the Amsterdam Stock Exchange. Why? Because they are different kind of vertically integrated application that even if they are on Ethereum or on any kind of protocols, essentially, they will have to keep a certain control over the network itself. We are doing it the other way around. So when the assets are in fact available on the Dusk network at that particular point in time, these assets can be composed, can be the object of DeFi applications to do more with these assets in according to the Reg DeFi vision, if you will, or direction that we highlighted years ago, so that essentially these assets are there at disposal to any kind of developer, as long as basically the users are onboarded on this generic application. And even for those that do not want to do the KYC or that are more closer to the ethos of the decentralized product, in which, and with privacy and all that, so to an open and permissionless network, we're also preparing something for them by wrapping these securities, so essentially to eliminate the capability of redeeming them for the securities that are backing these assets, and making sure that these wrapped securities are free to be composed, and then at some point when somebody wants to redeem, then they have to basically do KYC. This is nothing new. USDT, for instance, if you want to redeem USDT for dollars, then you have to log in to subscribe to Tether, and Tether makes it incredibly difficult for anyone to redeem dollars, right? So what happens is that all of you, me included, those that have got USDT, they go on exchanges to exchange it for something else. We don't go to Tether to redeem them, right? Same with Circle. Nobody goes to redeem at Circle. Why? Because you need to, to be an institution or an accredited investor. The KYC barrier is really, really, really that high, and it will work in exactly the same way for us. So when you guys see all the headlines about this venue or that venue, this application, this famous guy or this famous organization basically getting into the tokenization, then look at the application side or the protocol side. Is it a protocol? Is it a network that essentially is it's extending its capability or offering capability to compose things? Or is basically just, again, something that is already working in Web 2 that is ported to Web 3 because it wants to grab some more users that are coming from Web 3? That's a different thing than what we are doing, guys. What we are doing is a different thing. What we are doing is essentially just creating an ecosystem, a protocol for certain particular assets that are freely available to, for composition. The same way Binance has got nothing to do with Bitcoin, in the same way Robinhood has got nothing to do with Dusk. There is an overlap. Obviously, we invite Robinhood also to do something on the Dusk protocol, but at this particular point in time, first of all, we are too little to be able to, just offer something to those guys, and in a way that benefits us and them. At the same time, we need to, we are closer to the likes of Ondo, for instance, or those kind of those kind of application, with again the USP and the advantage that we control directly the regulatory licenses that allow us to bring forward basically what I just described.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good explanation. That actually makes me think of one of the questions which was asked today. Since you mentioned that we invite Robinhood to build an application or something on Dusk. One of the question was kind of in the same area, but not really. It was about will third parties be able to permissionlessly deploy their own rollups on our own base layer on Dusk DS, or will that be a permission process if any third party would want to do that?
So the capability of using Dusk DS as a data availability layer and consensus layer for other layer 2 is definitely something that it's on the horizon, but really not something that we are going to do immediately. Why? Because of focus. We don't have an organization that has got hundreds of developers or thousands of developers. We had to focus. The focus right now is basically to launch the assets as soon as possible. In order to do that, then we had to basically take certain decisions from an architectural perspective. This decision was the fact that initially we are going to go with Dusk EVM. After a while, we will try to just remove the execution layer from Dusk DS and put it in its own execution layer parallel to Dusk EVM, and we call this Dusk VM. Essentially, everything that is PyCrust and privacy preserving on the privacy preserving network, privacy preserving execution layer on top of Dusk DS. The effort that is required in order to have another execution layer, we will have to evaluate when and if we will be presented with these opportunities. There are certain actors that we have been talking to that do control layer 2s. They have their own layer 2s. But when we talk to them, then we quickly realize, both of our organization, that it's much better for them to bridge onto Dusk EVM and to have tools or develop toolings and applications that mirror their own layer 2 on Dusk EVM than for them to use Dusk DS as a modular layer. We have a completely different kind of model, compared to Celestia, for instance, or compared to other modular systems. We do not want to invite as many execution layers as possible. For us, at this particular point in time, is about realizing our vision about the capability to offer securities, to capture value from the real world and providing it to Web3 users, and vice versa. That's basically what we want to do. And at the same time, there is obviously utility on Dusk DS for these execution layers. We believe that there is enough utility basically for all of you that run part of the infrastructure. And we will evaluate whether we want to expand at a certain point. But from our priority perspective and our focus point, our focus is basically on these assets. And that's what I have to say about this.
Yeah, I think that's quite clear. And considering our focus is on providing security, someone did ask if we would be interested in real estate tokenization at some point, but I believe the answer is similar to what you mentioned. It's about focus, right? But if you want to say anything about it.
Real estate tokenization is one of these things that everybody's talking about, right? And everybody's doing. But what exactly is the advantage? Real estate tokenization is essentially an illiquid play, and personally, I do not see an immediate need for for real estate tokens. As a matter of fact, they are the barrier there is quite low. It's quite low, and it is very easy to tokenize this kind of assets. But because of that, it is also low value. There isn't really much to be had there. Real estate investment trusts are, are much lesser quality than other kind of assets that basically brings a lot more yield, for instance, that are much easier to tokenize, and probably they don't really produce the same kind of headlines, because if I am tokenizing a $7 billion real estate development project, everybody looks at the 7 billion and think, oh my God, there's going to be 7 billion. No, it's basically the value of that kind of development. And what gets offered is, it's absolute shit. Sorry to say it in these kind of blunt terms, but that's what I think. There needs to be collection of rents practically everywhere, or somebody that intermediates the sale of these assets, that basically loads the money that's coming from the ROI on all these different kind of on-chain instruments in order to provide some dividends. These assets are very liquid. They are they are basically bubble prone. There are a lot of different kind of real estate projects, especially in Dubai, right? And it's a bubble. You can see that. I mean, if you go there and you look at the market there, everybody's tokenizing everything in terms of real estate in Dubai. Pieces of desert, this kind of stuff. And yet, where is the yield coming from? Not much. I mean, the entirety of the real estate in Dubai, for instance, is fueled by money laundering, by a lot of different organizations that do not really, have any business in or any particularly legitimate business that they can run in better or more stricter legislation. They go there on the real estate, and they fund a lot of money there, and then that's what happens. So real estate is something that I don't particularly think is very interesting. Like I said, it's something that might actually be good when testing the water, but we have many. There are much better investment for which there is much more appetite, and a lot of different much more liquid instruments that are much better poised to be automatized or made automated through smart contracts, and that are automate. Thank you. Sorry, sometimes my English escapes me. And is much simpler to and they are much more compatible with the decentralized world. So treasuries, for instance, treasuries are a great product. They are much more liquid, and try to redeem I don't know, a condo in Abu Dhabi. I mean, I really don't think that there is a lot to redeem there. These are liquid assets. But if you are actually redeeming treasuries, treasury bonds, U.S. treasury bonds or European treasury bonds, practically everybody will want to get them back, because they, for instance, banks, because they profit from the spread. And at the same time, those that in fact want to park their assets, because this is the overall reason to have those kind of assets. then they can do so very, very easily. They can get in and out of these assets pretty much like everybody's getting in and out of stablecoin. And if you don't want stability and you want to gamble a little more, you can get into ETFs, for instance, in indexes, if you want to have different kind of investment capabilities. If you really want real estate, just my suggestion would be go out there and buy something without really bothering to make it so complicated with tokenization and this kind of things. But again, this is my own personal idea. And I am an opportunist. Sorry. If somebody will come and say, well, you know what, $7 billion worth of development project tokenized on Dusk, and we will bring the liquidity, and the liquidity will be funneled through, for instance, MPEX or any other European legitimate venue, then I'm all ears. I'm obviously not precluding myself. But again, focus.
Yeah, focus. And if the right opportunity comes, then sure. But focus is key, and securities are more liquid. The next question was an angel investor actually put it in chat as well, but I was just getting to that, sir. Would be, how would the security deposit for native issuance of securities in primary market look like on Dusk? For instance, issuance fees in Tradify vary anywhere from 3 to 7% of the assets being issued, on top of legal and compliance fees, audit and accounting fees. Will the security deposit be in the form of a purchase of Dusk tokens in open market before it's locked up?
So there are two different things here. So one thing is essentially just the capability to create or to purchase security deposits of Dusk when a certain particular asset gets listed on Dusk on its tokenization capabilities. That is one way to look at that, and that is something that we are going to work on after putting all the different kind of assets that we are getting already, that are already existing. So for what concerns primary markets, there are many different platforms out there, right? At some point we will want to do primary market ourselves. As a matter of fact, that has been the primary model for MPEX to do primary market, and MPEX has the EU CESP or EUSC European crowdfunding license, let me put it that way, to be able to actually collect money from investors and create these assets in primary market. But where the real where the real opportunity is at this particular point in time is basically to provide secondary market capabilities. Not only secondary market capabilities, but also the capability of brokering assets that are somewhere else. Primary market is not really something that is, is something that a lot of different entities can do, whether they have crowdfunding license or not. If you have a crowdfunding license, actually it's much simpler because you can collect money on behalf of somebody else. But if you are an organization and you want to issue your own bond, you can do so. You don't really need a primary market or any kind of license to do so, which means that, again, the barrier is quite low. So everybody is capable of doing that. So we don't really want to do that. What we want is for all the different kind of pipelines of different primary market issuance to come to Dusk and to offer these assets to our investor community, to our users, to the developers, and so on and so forth. Going after primary market basically is in by itself, the object of some pretty time-consuming focus. That said, primary market is definitely something that we are looking at. At the moment, it is much simpler for us to accept primary issuers directly on MPEX, so that this issuance is coming from MPEX, is coming on MPEX. MPEX lists these assets, and then these assets are available to Dusk, and then the investors of Dusk. We can also facilitate the collection of money of investment for MPEX. At some point, the primary market is also going to be moved to the protocol directly. At that particular point in time, there is not going to be any, or there is going to be a minimal amount of fees that we are going to collect from primary market issuers. And these fees normally are definitely going to be provided as as a security deposits in Dusk rather than fiat. But this is again something that we have to work toward, because primary market, if it is just primary market for the sake of primary market, then you can do that on any kind of protocol, you can do that on any kind of platform, right? So what is really important is the capability of basically just linking these assets to applications, to an investor base, to certain certain opportunities that are coming. And I believe that it is much more lucrative for all of us to concentrate and focus on the assets that at the moment we're working on.
Makes sense. Makes sense. The next
We have
question was.
time for one more. I have time for one more question, and then I will need to go
Oh,
because
I'm sorry, I didn't
because
realize how how fast the time flew by. Yes, sorry. Then let's take the next question from Angel Investor, which I had on my list as well. Is, will Dusk have a role in the retail stock tokenization market, or is it primarily targeting institutional compliant assets like bonds and private equity?
Stocks as in equity? Is that what the
Retail
question is about?
stock tokenization. Now I'm thinking, since
Retail stock tokenization,
yeah,
it pertains, it probably pertains to publicly traded stocks. Yes, we are looking at that. We are working on that. I mean, the capability of Ampex to provide a broker license, it means that we can use that brokerage in order to go to different kind of venues, extract the assets, tokenize them, and offer them. This has a great opportunity because by having Web3 mean to own and do partial self custodies of these assets. Basically, you can offer these assets to a wider public, right? That are coming from a lot of different other legislations, even outside of Europe. This kind of audience, they normally have to pay a wealth manager in order to get or to access these assets. Of course, we want to make it very simple for them to get them without really having to pay for wealth management. And at the same time, we also want to fractionalize these assets in order basically to provide some kind of Robin Hood-esque capability to invest even smaller amount of money. The challenge there is the fact that in order to get these assets and to broker these assets, then the infrastructure that is needed is actually quite expensive and quite it will take quite some time before being able to get these assets. There are some ways around it. For instance, we could, for example, just make use of another broker so that this could be implemented as a broker-to-broker model. Because these brokers essentially, they already had the infrastructure that is deployed on all different kind of venues, the Deutsche Börse, the New York Stock Exchange, the London Stock Exchange, Borsa Italiana, and so on and so forth. But the problem there is the fact that normally this broker work with within the confines of Web2. They have opening hours. It's very difficult to do 24/7 trading. And so the tokenization needs to reflect this kind of capabilities. Same thing for what concern money, because we would need essentially to create or to transfer the money from somebody that buys these securities or buys this token to the broker account. So there are many different kind of complications. The license allows us to do so, and we are among the few in the world that can do that. But at the same time, the technical integration would take quite some time in order to do it right. So in the future, this would definitely be a priority, but this particular point in time, we are looking more to broker venues that already work with tokenized assets and DLTs, and that would make that for those it's there aren't really many, so you guys can imagine whom we are talking to at this particular point in time, except alongside 21x you guys know about. And then at some point we are going to at some point the priority is basically to get those kind of assets first. But yes, it is definitely something that we have been looking at, that we keep looking at, and we are planning for our immediate future.
Perfect. Yeah, there you go. That's I think that makes it quite clear. Thank you, Emma. Well, then that's the last question for today. Thank you, Angel Investor, for the questions as well. And guest number one, we'll get to your question as well. I'll try to also get some answers during this week and answer in chat to a lot of the questions that you guys prepared. I know there's quite a list, and it might get a big backlog of questions throughout these team Hangouts. So I'll try to answer a lot of them in chat, and then save some for the Hangouts. The more important ones I'll try to save for the Hangouts. Now the recording will, like always, be available probably tomorrow, along with the summary. And that's the end of this week's Team Hangouts. Thank you, Emanuele, for taking the time to take these questions. Thank you, everyone, for the questions, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good day.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.